This is a fun one, just promise not to be weird, yeah? The secret my keeper is keeping is that it's actually a cheap posable artist mannequin. These, let's just call them dolls to get that out of the way with, cost me £7 each, and the quality reflects the price. The articulation in the joints is shoddy, but that's nothing a generous serving of CA glue can't fix, along with a gentle dusting of some magic powder. The inspiration for this build comes from this character created by Moises Castellanos for the game Conrad Stevenson's Paranormal PI. It's delightfully creepy. So that means we need a back mouth. There are many ways to create a spine gully, but a rotary doom is the one that felt most thematically appropriate. With the back gapped, it was time for some arms. 4 of them in fact. I found that by removing the ball joints from the second pair of arms, it created a socket that naturally fitted perfectly onto the shoulder, which was handy. I'm Chris, this is Offbeat Builds, and today's episode is sponsored by Grilliput. Evidently, there are lots of gaps to fill, and this 50-50 mixture of green stuff and milliput is my go-to for that kind of thing. It's easier to work with than raw milliput, and it dries hard enough to sand and shape with files, unlike green stuff. Anyhow, I went around as many joints as I could, building up the putty so that it would dry slightly proud of the surrounding material. This took a couple of sessions since this thing is all joints. Then of course, there was sanding, starting with coarse material and working my way to finer grades, but that's boring to watch, so let's do some brain surgery. The script just says that I should laugh maniacally at this point. Yeah, not sure about that. After that whole scalping business, I figured I needed to make a bit of space for furnishings with a rotary burr. I could have used a knife, but, you know, give a man a Dremel and he'll eat for a lifetime. The next order of business was the head tentacles, or headticles, which I made by abrading the ends of some 3mm armature wire. This was actually easier to do by hand than in the drill, but the footage looks rubbish, so rotary doom will have to suffice. As you would expect, the metallic spaghettos were then secured into the cranial void using the power of chemistry, before moving my attention to what can only be described as headgums. I chose standard NATO issue green stuff for this, since I had no need to sand it, and the sticking powder of the globby green miracle would be working to my advantage. I'm no sculptor, so I just went around and pushed some gun-like shapes into the putty until I got bored enough to add some teeth. These are clipped off of the ends of wooden cocktail sticks because I'm lazy like that. The eye detail on this model is, non-existent, so my solution was to hide it under a blindfold. It's easier to keep secrets when you don't know anything. I've featured the cheesecloth and Mod Podge method on the channel quite a lot recently, so maybe check out the Traitor Guard video if you want to know more. Alternatively, Plastic Surgery, an ever-expanding guide, is a handy reference covering all sorts of techniques and tips from these videos. It's designed to fit into your infernal rectangle and is available as a Patreon member benefit. Since the model was still pretty unmanageable, I thought I'd get the basing out of the way before installing the head. Why upside down? Well, yeah, I kinda liked what it did for the lines of the model, and demons do have some form with that kind of thing. The Keeper of Secrets needs some spiky bits, which were cut and shaped from some 2mm styrene sheet. To give them a place to call home, the rear set of hands, were delicately removed, and the scything pointers were pinned into place using some of Clippy's contorted torso. To smooth out the transition, I once again got out the rotary burr in lieu of a much more sensible needle file, and started burring rotarily. This was all well and good, but I decided there should be some spines along the transition, which I built up from a lump of Grilliput, festooned with some more of those cocktail stick clippings. Round the back, similar things were happening. My demon needed a back mouth, and that meant more work with the grilliput. Like all good mouths, I started with the gums, which is to say I wasn't really sure how it should look, so I roughed out the basic shape before lining the inside of the mouth and giving it the old cocktail stick treatment. And now a lesson in killing your darlings. I really liked the open jaw on the original character, so proceeded to build a styrene former that would give the part strength. I covered this with green stuff to bulk out the shape and provide the necessary details, and provided it with a generous helping of teeth, only to discover that I felt it completely ruined the lines of the model and gave up. So I forgot all about that and moved on to some texturing. A mix of fine and coarse texture pastes were used. It doesn't matter which ones, these are just what I had in stock. I added some fine tile grout and a little bit of PVA glue to create a texture paste that had a variety of grain sizes and enough adhesion to stave off future nightmares. The mixture was then lovingly applied all around the more horror-y parts of the model and wherever else I fancied. The goal was to break up the smoothness of the model, add to the demonic vibes, and to hide any bits that might upset the algorithm. At this stage, I could finally twist the headticles into a more pleasing shape. I'd previously kept them restrained to allow easier access to the rest of the model, but with the light showing at the end of the tunnel, it was time. In the back mouth, or separating spine, or whatever the heck it is now, I added some crackle texture paint, which is basically impossible to capture on video. It was also impossible to capture adding it to the inside faces of some of the limb joints too. While we're on the subject of texturing, I gave the skull pasta a haphazard glazing with some CA glue to, and I used the word after great consideration, make them look more blobbly. If you're wondering, I did this after the first layer of paint as a protective measure, as paint can chip off the metal wire fairly easily and superglue's pretty hard stuff. Finally, it was time to add some good old-fashioned gore using the well-trodden technique of Yoo-hoo glue mixed with a translucent red paint, in this case Tamiya Clear Red. This was globbed onto the model and stretched out anywhere that would give gaping more energy, and once dry it was toned down a little bit with some weathering to make it look less fresh. Speaking of which, the last step of the texturing process was to blow some red speed paint off of the end of a brush to create a nice bit of blood spatter, because it's, that kind of build. Greater Deamon? Maybe. What I can say is this was an extremely fun build, and at under £20 all in, it might just be the cheapest thing I've ever made on the channel. Thanks to Moises for the inspiration and for letting me use his renders in the video, and to all of you for watching. Next time out, I'll be back on the Grim Team bandwagon.